She sold her eggs to pay off $50,000 in student debt because she had no options, apparently. Like, this is a really drastic way to pay off your debt, right? Like, there really shouldn't be any reason for someone to do something like this as like a last resort. But let's read this article and let's find out. She's putting all her eggs in one basket and paying off her loans. New Yorker Cassandra Jones sold her frozen eggs for $50,000 so she could put the cash towards her, oh my god, her 167,000 mountain of student debt. The 28-year-old told the Post she underwent 5 rounds of egg donations in a last-ditch effort to pay off her loans. Here's the thing: 167,000 in what? So, despite working 3 jobs while earning her undergraduate degree and living rent-free at her parents' house, she was still $25,000 in the hole after 4 years. Then, when she decided to earn a master's degree in public health, she tacked on another $40,000 per each additional year of education at New York University. But with really no other options, she only had 1 month to figure out a financial. Now, the thing that I don't like about this, right? She continuously made bad choices, right? She continuously made bad choices. She made bad choices in terms of whatever her degree was and the school that she was going to that was causing her to be $25,000 in the hole, right? And her getting a master's degree in public health for whatever reason. Why do you need a master's degree in public health when you're already in the hole? Okay? And here's the thing: $40,000 in the hole per each additional year. Think about that. For each extra year, she's $40,000 in the hole. That's crazy. But with really no other options, she says, she only had 1 month to figure out a financial plan. I saw it as one of the only ways to be able to have any kind of money at all, Jones told the Post. I've done everything I possibly could, include donate my eggs, and powered through and found resilience to keep going and try to achieve, and have achieved, what society has always told me I needed to do to be successful. Have you ever thought about, I don't know, maybe going to a community college? I don't know. She exhausted every other avenue, she said, including commuting from home in California during undergraduate. Dear Lord. Okay, so look, she exhausted every other avenue, she said, including commuting from home in California during undergraduate, taking out the maximum student loans allowed, selling her car, going to community college, and she was even in an early college program in high school. Look, the community college thing makes perfect sense. Early college program makes perfect sense. But she went to probably very, very expensive graduate schools. That is the only possible way that she could be this much in the hole. She chose a very expensive degree at a very expensive school for literally no reason. Or she was just living off of these student loans. Like, it's absolutely insane. So she was left with 167,000 in loans to pay off, which, by the way, if you're working in public health, you ain't making much money. I wish that wasn't just for my tuition, Jones told JM Press. I wish that money was for a down payment for a house or to kickstart my own business. I don't know, maybe you shouldn't have gone to expensive schools for your master's degree, for this other crap. Meanwhile, as her accumulating debt kept her up at night, a friend first suggested donating her eggs for money. Another pal said she made 4 months worth of wages in mere weeks from egg donations alone, convincing Jones, then 23, to dive in. She completed her first round of donations back home in California for $8,000 before moving to New York, where she donated the rest of her eggs at the NYU Langone Fertility Center for $10,000 each time. After 5 rounds of egg donation, she's barely made a dent in her overall debt. The projected repayments for the school loans are $2,000 a month for the next minimum 10 years of my life, Jones said. Eh, it's going to be longer than 10 years. Just saying. It's going to be longer than 10 years. Your student loans are not going to be forgiven. Just saying. Hearing that number out loud every single time almost makes me catch my breath, she continued. When you're desperate to figure things out as a young adult, and you have this crushing amount of debt from the education system, it puts you between a rock and a hard place. Now, here's the thing. She chose to go into debt for that much. Just saying. Frozen eggs can rake in anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 for a donor. However, the cost to purchase them, along with medical treatment, can range from $10,000 to more than $40,000. But donating eggs isn't as easy as it might seem. Jones learned to give herself hormone injections, calling the process labor intensive, and some studies have shown an increased risk of developing breast cancer in young donors who undergo ovarian stimulation. In fact, the first time she donated, she woke up in pretty excruciating pain despite having to start school right away. I actually showed up to orientation for NYU on painkillers 2 days after I donated, Jones told the Post, even though they say that you can go back to normal activity, not strenuous, but normal activity within a day or so. I don't believe that. There was a ton of pressure and swelling in my lower abdomen, pain from cramping that made it difficult to walk, stand up, sit down, or laugh, she continued. The feeling, which she described as discomfort, was worsened by eating or drinking too much and causing her to have cravings, tender breast dehydration, and sex drive changes. After 2 times, the subsequent donations began to have longer lasting side effects. I felt like my body wasn't able to recover in the same way, she said, even noting that she's convinced she has long-term hormonal imbalances in scar tissue despite not seeing a specialist for it yet. I struggle with sleep now, digestive issues, weight loss, and gain mood, she said. Just things that weren't very obvious before I started doing this now I feel like have become a bit of a problem. Jones' unconventional solution to her crippling debt has raised some eyebrows, but she said people her age get it. The biggest misconception about debt is that we made the decision, so we should somehow live with it, but what choices were we really offered to secure our futures? She's basically putting the blame on other people. Like, she's literally putting the blame on other people. She's literally putting the blame on everybody but herself. Like, this is just so crazy to see, right? The biggest misconception about debt is that we made this decision. You signed the piece of paper to get yourself into over 6 figures of debt. You don't just accidentally get into over 6 figures in debt. Just like how you don't accidentally donate your eggs for money to pay off for your bad decision. Like, this is crazy. Like, this line of thinking is going to cause her to get further into debt even after doing all this stuff. So people my age get it. They completely emphasize with the situation and are just as pissed at how our education system and government has failed us. No, you failed yourself. This individual failed herself. Okay? She can't blame anyone else but herself for getting into over 6 figures of debt. Okay? Nearly every single person in the United States can get a full college degree at a community college for very little money. You could also go to a trade school for pretty low money, right? Not to mention, you could go to a community college for 2 years, then transfer to a major university for the other 2 years for not that much money. Okay? Like, it literally makes no sense how she's getting into over $100,000 in student debt. Unless she's literally living off of those loans. That's the only way that I could see it. Unless she specifically chose very expensive schools to end up going to for their tuition because I don't know, maybe the school looked nice. Oh, maybe she liked the people at the school. Maybe she liked the political views of the school. Like, it's absolutely insane. By the way, keep in mind as well, she chose to live in California and also New York, the two highest taxed states. So even with a master's degree, Jones was only able to secure a part-time paid internship post-graduation when the COVID-19 pandemic first started. Maybe it's because of the type of degree that you ended up getting into with, what, like public health? What? They took 6 to 7 months to bring me on full-time through a pandemic, so I was denied health insurance, she said, which made paying off her interest-accumulated loans more difficult. The money that I was making with the work in the part-time internship or just not finding work with a master's degree for 8 months was only barely enough to pay my bills, she said. So I knew that some other form of repayment had to be created, had to be done in order to even try to make a dent in those loans. And Jones isn't the only one struggling with student debt. The average student loan debt in the United States rings in at $57,520 according to NerdWallet, with a grand total coming to $1.75 trillion. Which, by the way, if you've never checked it out before, check out the debt clock. It is disgusting what you read on there. It is crazy. Older generations have no idea what this feels like with the new circumstances we have to endure, she said. In the 70s and 80s, tuition and fees plus room and board at a four-year college were $1,400. Now it's an average of $22,000, which is still considered low for most students. Here's the thing. There's no such thing as a requirement that you actually got a board at these colleges, okay? The tuition is still actually doable for most in-state colleges. But people decide, oh no, I need the full university experience. I need the full college experience. I'm going to live on college campus. I'm going to hang out with all the people there. I'm going to party. I'm going to do all this stuff. I want the full college head to toe experience, and that's what costs 20, 30, 40, maybe even $70,000 a year for nothing. You're paying that much money for nothing. Minimum wage, she continued, only grew from $1.50 to $7.25 or 350%, while higher education costs had a 1,400% increase. To even have a chance to afford tuition without debt while in school, we would have to work 40 to 50 hours a week with whatever wages you can get without a degree and then somehow pull off being a full-time student and find the time to, I guess, sleep, she said. Generations who also currently hold top-tier positions now and work their way up don't have the same qualifying entry points either. Jones said people over 40 are dismissive and aggressive toward her generation, but she argued that bachelor's degrees simply aren't enough to get higher-paying roles. We actually are working even harder than they did, with very little to no reward to speak for it, and I think that is why our adaptations and priorities have shifted as a result, she said. Here's the thing. This is very untrue because you could literally go get a trade certificate and make more money than she's making in less time. Okay? The reality of this situation, her situation, and people with a similar situation as hers, is one, they blame everyone but themselves. Like you can literally read this inside this thing. She blames everyone but herself. Two, she chose a degree that doesn't really have a market value at all. Public health? Okay. What decent company cares about public health in terms of like actual money that generates money? You got engineering that is good for money. There's anything medical, right? I'm talking like pharmacy, doctor, dentist, therapist, all that kind of stuff. And even therapist is like kind of like iffy as to like if it's actually a decent field to get into. Okay? Marketing is good. Business is good. Sales is good, right? But public health? No. Sociology? No. Right? Like there's so many weird degrees that people get for basically no reason. Like, think about it. Does it make sense at all to anyone to go nearly $170,000 in debt for a job that only pays potentially 50K per year? If that? Like, does that make sense? Because that doesn't make sense to me. Because there's people that have no degree that are in sales positions that make more money than that. There are people in the trades with less schooling that make way more money than that. Now they probably work a lot harder too, but they still make a lot of money. So like I just don't understand why people choose degrees that literally have no tangible value in the marketplace at all. And here's the thing, if you pay attention to this, if you stumbled upon this, if you want to learn how to get out of debt and not be like her, because guess what? Based off what she said, I understand what her plan is going to try to be. She's going to try to do the whole serving like, in the public sector, right? In the government sector for 10 years, hoping that her debt will be forgiven. Because she put that 10-year little segment in this article, okay? Her debt is not going to get forgiven. Period. End of story. It's not going to get forgiven. So she's going to actually have donated her eggs to put a big amount of cash down on her student debt to then, after 10 years, realize, wait a minute, I got rid of my eggs, I harmed myself, I potentially gave myself a higher risk of breast cancer to end up with more debt because she's not going to pay off her debt, one, with this line of thinking, but also thinking that her student loans are just going to get forgiven by the government. Like, she's going to be holding this debt for the rest of her life with this type of mindset that she has. But again, if you want to learn how to get out of debt, go to 40inbox.com and learn how to get out of debt. Because this is absolutely ridiculous. She blames every single other person but herself. She blames the school. She blames the government, even though she's working for the government in public health, right? It's like, it's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Like, I feel not bad at all for anyone who puts themselves in this situation like this. Because there is no excuse for you to purposely put yourself in $170,000 in debt for a public health degree. At all.